So I wanted to start our introductions for the last of our panels. Very sad face. It's going to be a talk of superlatives. So it's bigger, it's faster, and it's better. So please welcome our guests for their panel on how generative AI can unlock untapped efficiency and increase productivity for brands. So please welcome to the stage Alec Barr, who is the head of behavioural science at the Oliver Agency. Ooh, fan club. We also have the lovely Bardin, who's the digital marketing legend, ex-Coca-Cola, Unilever, and Sony. And I've had the pleasure of working with him. He's a delight. And we also have Jamie Irving at Pentland Brands, and he is the VP of Digital Marketing and CRM. And we are back again with Nihir Vedd, who is returning to moderate after the fantastic talk earlier. So thank you again, Nihir. And I will leave it with you. So thank you very much.
Do you have a mic here? Thank you. I won't speak into both. I think the only thing worse than my voice is 2 times my voice. Okay, so thank you very much for the intros. I'm just going to ask all of you to go around in a circle and briefly say maybe the verbal equivalent of 1 paragraph about what you do and what your responsibilities are. So start with you, Jamie.
Hi. So I'm Jamie Irving. I work for Pentland Brands, which is a business that owns Speedo, Berghaus, Canterbury, Mitre, and a couple of others. And I basically look after digital marketing and CRM, so all the touch points with our consumers.
Hi, I'm Bardin. Until last week, I was at Coca-Cola, and I was looking after shopper marketing experience. So everything that is around creating sales at the point of purchase, both online and offline. And I'm currently off for a few weeks until the next gig.
Hi everyone, I'm Alec Barr. I head up the behavioural science unit at Oliver Agency. So I pretty much spend my time looking at the gap between what people say they do and what they actually do. So spending a lot of time doing research and figuring out the quirks of human psychology, and then working out how we can manipulate that to some extent.
Cool. Yeah, if you can keep the mic. So we're going to just start with a very general question and then dive more into specifics based on that. So can you guys talk a bit more about how your companies are adopting AI within the company itself?
Yeah, sure. So we are actually positioned as an AI company. We've been using AI for sort of a long, long time prior to the sort of Gen AI explosion. But I guess one of the things that we use or that we kind of tout the most at the moment is we have a tool called Pencil, which is essentially a generative AI platform that helps with doing ad apps of local market ad apps of assets at scale. It also plugs into the actual ad tech account, so you can measure what you spit out into the world. So that's kind of to go back to what you were talking about a moment ago, the kind of front end of what we do. At the back end, we have quite a few people in as part of an AI council that are always doing various R&D things using generative AI. And one of the things that is quite cool at the moment is trying to improve the briefing process between agencies and brands. So sometimes it might be that a brief comes through over email and it's missing vital information that we need to do our job, or we send a brief through and it doesn't contain vital information that you need from us or something like that. So we're now using Gen AI to help basically scrutinize the elements of a brief based on what we know a good brief looks like, so we can make sure that no matter who is giving the brief and no matter what circumstances they're under, all the right information is contained in it.
Cool. Let's just pass the mic back. So Seb.
For Coke, the way the company has been using AI is really to put AI as part of a consumer and shopper experience. So everything is around, how can we offer, the best campaigns, but also experience outside the campaign. So I don't know, probably you remember about the Masterpiece campaign, which was looking at art, and then the AI, Gen AI, was creating a 30 seconds advertising, and then we started to adopt it into more and more campaigns. So the last Christmas it was generate your Christmas card with AI. There was the create the real magic as well. So now it's part as an always-on approach. And recently, I think it was around April, where Coke decided to sign a 1.1 billion commitment with Microsoft, which is, of course, linked to the cloud solution, but of course AI is part of the added value as part of it. But again, the company is really serious about using it to improve efficiency, getting high quality campaigns, high quality marketing, but also productivity at the end of the day. So now everything is powered by Copilot in the back end, so where we are able to, to spend less time creating nice presentation and get things done quickly.
Is the Gen AI that you're using just on actually creating the creatives, or are you using AI as well to analyze the performance and create better decisions?
So it's a step-by-step approach. I think, of course, because we are a marketing organization, it's really starting with what can we do in terms of, production, in terms of, communication. But again, we've seen some cases where when we are looking at ideation, we will start with AI. We will ask AI a lot of, prompt, a lot of queries. So definitely, this is now part of our always-on ways of working nowadays.
Cool. It's good to go last because I can think of my answer, but it is going to be a bit of a crap one, I'm afraid. So we are at the infancy of our journey when it comes to AI. We're still probably dancing with the great-grandmother, which is machine learning, and looking at how we get the best out of models such as like propensity and that sort of thing, or next best action, which feels like that's something the industry was talking about a while ago, but no one actually did it that well. So that's where we want to master that and make sure we're showing up in the right way to our customers and our consumers with the right sort of information. And you can only do that by having the best possible use of your data. So when we're thinking about AI, we use it and leverage it a lot from a media standpoint currently, and we work with agencies to do so. From a creative standpoint, I think there is an argument to say that if you're not set up in the best way and you're not feeding the right data in, it's just going to fail. So we want to start from the best possible point, and we're looking at what it takes as an organization, to get to that point.
And is this with proprietary data that Pentland has, or using existing LLM tech to help with the next best action and other decision making?
So that's with our own data, and where we have to be quite careful is obviously we deal with wholesalers a lot. So we've got two routes to market: one which is wholesale, one which is direct to consumer. So we have to be very careful with competition law, that sort of thing, and make sure that ultimately we're using our data in the most responsible way. So it's using our data, and then when we're thinking about how we use some of those like generative AI models, that's going to be more at the back end. So how we create efficiency within our infrastructure internally to then start to plug in the best possible data points so that we can make something interesting. It's one of those things. It's like there's no point in AI for the sake of AI. It needs to be meaningful. It can't just be a buzz term that you're doing for the sake of, I don't know, like progression in your job.
Yeah.
So we want to do it in a meaningful way. We're starting a journey with our consumers. Right now, D2C is a very small percentage of what we do. We don't want to mess that up. It's a nice thing to be able to start from a foundation of going, our data isn't fucked. We can actually do this properly. So we want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and when you scale, obviously, you have the right infrastructure in place to make those right actions. Cool. Now, I think what I like about this panel is that we have somebody on agency side and two people more on client side. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. Like, who is the responsibility on when it comes to adopting AI? And if they are shared responsibilities, where do you think those responsibilities lie?
So it's a complete collaboration. It comes down to the guardrails. So how do you want to work with the agency? From my standpoint, and I'm ex-agency, so can kind of talk to both sides. It comes down to those guardrails that you set. But also, when you're working with an agency, historically, talent was kind of the key player in the relationship. When you're thinking about the value an agency brings, it was talent, and you're basically selling people, but you've got the best people in market. Then tech came into play, and that was more part of the value proposition as well. So now it just feels like it's the next phase of that. So where we talk about back-end AI, that could be an agency leveraging their own tech, or they'll have their own instance of ChatGPT that they're framing in their own way. That can really help them from a time-saving perspective. Then actually, I guess you could kind of call it, we get the front-end benefit. If agencies are taking advantage of AI in that way, we should have more of their time to be critical thinkers, to think about the strategy, to think about the right creative approach, all of those things. So it's a complete collaboration. I think agencies are always going to move faster than clients when it comes to AI, and we need them to do a lot of the testing and the learning.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think if it is collaboration, but probably the burden of responsibility lies on the agency more, because we've been traditionally seen as like the cool ones who are supposed to know everything and like have the macro view and come to you guys with an expansive, sort of market scan. And I think that pressure is maybe a little bit scary. The way I see it in my head is like, it's the brand's responsibility to invest, and it's the agency's responsibility to innovate. So we want to know that you guys are willing to put your money where your mouth is, kind of thing. Even if it is, by the way, I totally agree with not just going for the latest new shiny thing. If you haven't, mastered next best action, that's completely the right way of looking at it. But once we can be sure that a brand has decided to invest in AI, then it's our responsibility to figure out the cool ways in which you can use it. I think also that we talk about the front end and the back end. Back end might be kind of here, what you're talking about in your keynote. It might be market intelligence, but it also just might be what the individuals in the agency are doing on a day-to-day basis. I want everyone around me to be using ChatGPT all the time to figure out how they can automate parts of their job. They're their best place to do it. The institutionalization of AI is by definition like sluggish. It's going to be difficult, but on a personal level, it's going to be much, much easier for people to innovate. So if we can get the tools, those components, into the hands of individual people with their domain expertise in an agency, then yeah, you suddenly sort of unlock the speed of innovation, I think, which is cool.
Alec, you've built a few tools based on ChatGPT. Could you dive into them if they're relevant here?
Yeah. I don't think Rory Sutherland's in the crowd, but I built a chatbot called the Rory Sotherbot with his permission, by the way. So it's trained on the corpus of all his podcasts and his books and every Spectator article he's written. And then I did that, and then I went to him and I said, I've done this thing. Are you gonna sue me, or does this flatter you, basically? Like, which of these two is it going to be? And the man has an endearing ego, so I was hoping that it was like on the latter side. But he was a fan of it, and it's available on the GPT stores. You can go and use this, and it's like marketing consultant meets behavioral scientist, and you can have a chat, and you can kind of pull out case studies. And but it's really, really easy to do this. So like, I'm not a data scientist. I'm not an engineer. I got interested in AI 2 years ago. I did an English degree. I know nothing about tech in principle, but it's much, much easier than you think to do this kind of stuff. And I think for any Ethan Mollick fans out there, who's well worth following on LinkedIn if you don't already, he basically says just everyone needs their 10 hours with this tech. 10 hours with this tech will tell you what it can and can't do. Don't ask it to write a poem and then be disappointed that the poem's a bit shit. That's like not a good use case. If you spend time with your field, with your domain, and you get 10 hours of practice, you will very quickly find out what it's good and bad at. And you'll be able to build a chatbot like in an afternoon, genuinely.
How did you find that chatbot compared to the real Rory Sutherland? Or I guess the more general question, how does AI compare to like a ingenious human?
It's less sweary than Rory, for one thing. I tried to code it so that it would be sweary, but its ethical boundaries don't let you do that. It's weird. It stereotypes him, right? I've tried really hard to. When I say code it, you just write lines of prose that describe his personality. And it does a good job of capturing sort of his witticisms and his anecdotes, but you interact with it for 10 minutes and it suddenly becomes generic. It's not like speaking to a real human, obviously. It has stock phrases that it goes to. It feels like a caricature of him after you spend a bit of time with it. It's very useful. I built it as a repository to access his brain on demand, but as a simulation of a human, we're not there yet. Clearly we will be. I personally think we're not very far off that.
Seb, in your experience, both at Coca-Cola and other places, are there use cases for LLMs which go beyond just generating copy? Like, how else can people use this to increase productivity and efficiency internally?
I think every time it's about what is the objectives that you're trying to achieve. So is it about cost saving through efficiencies? Is it about improving our work, or is it about productivity? So, and then you need to put the consumer at the heart of it. So, which is what we are doing anyway. So I guess the most important here is really to. I've lost my track. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. Like, are there use cases for LLMs outside of just copy generation?
Just outside. The use cases. It's back to the point around finite track. Back to the point about consumer experience is really to look at what are the other opportunities outside to to improve this experience. And I think there's some very good examples out there, like Toby from Vodafone, for instance. In this case, using a much more advanced chatbot powered by AI to answer all the queries, to really be fast and and avoid any friction between what you want to find and what you want to what we're asking. So definitely there is more opportunities around customer services, and also what I find recently, it's also around these opportunities from media owners like Amazon, for instance, that they are starting to integrate AI as part of their selling proposition. So if you want to buy Amazon DSP to do retail media, you don't need to come with a full asset of creatives. You can go there, and then you use Gen AI to create your banners by using the different inventory of products. So definitely, for me, it's really around this efficiency. It's how make saving times and really go quick to markets to go live.
And is there a worry by the the chatbots which brands are exposing to their customers about brand safety, or these chatbots hallucinating basically and either giving false content or even offensive content to their customers?
I think this is where you need to get the involvement of several teams when you're starting to go into that area. And for us, having legal privacy to avoid any brand reputation. I think there was a brand recently, forgot it was in the press.
Canada Airline had that chatbot that basically promised a refund to someone that wasn't in their T's and C's. And when they took it to court, the consumer won. It was like, the chatbot's your responsibility. It's hallucinated, but it's your responsibility. If one of your employees hallucinates, it's still on them.
So that's why I think it's really important to have legal from the start. And we were looking at different opportunities recently, and I wouldn't have a conversation without the legal team, without the ER team. So it's a multi-discipline effort that has to go behind any initiatives.
Cool. Jamie, are you and your company excited by what AI can actually offer?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's massive potential, and I think even if we're thinking, like, I'll just take the marketing department, right, as an example. Even if we're not pushing AI in front of consumers, it can make us better marketers. So if you think around, like, ideation has been improved so much by the fact that it can now be done against something which is hopefully completely unbiased unless the model's broken in some way. Which means that actually when we're thinking about how we plan creatively and from a media standpoint, we can remove our bias as well if we have any which is inherent, and we can bring an element of diversity to our planning, which we may not have to start with. I was listening to a podcast the other day where someone was actually talking about how they had a bit of a battle with themselves, but using ChatGPT. So it was something political and they couldn't understand the other side of the argument. It didn't change their mindset, but they understood it more. So they had more compassion for the other side of the fence, if you like. So we as a department, if we're embracing these technologies, we can put ourselves in the position to give our agency partners a better brief and to effectively show up in front of consumers in a much better way.
I think you've had experience both on the agency and the client side of things. So if you had a magic wand, what would you kind of create what is the biggest problem that either you or from your experience an agency or a client is facing, and what would you look to solve?
Oh, I mean, there's loads. The biggest one that an agency will always face is they're squeezing fees at the moment, or they're getting their fees squeezed. So how can you actually use AI to help your talent problem and to think more strategically? I think on the client side is how do we work better and how do we become better partners for our agency? And that, a lot of it does come down to the brief and making sure that we're suggesting the right things and we're also backed up by the right sort of research. And I think research is one of those areas that when you enter into a relationship with an agency, it's the thing you undervalue, where actually it's the most valuable asset you can get from them, is they've got access to all these tools. A lot of them powered by AI, and you're getting that survey data on a much larger scale than you would ordinarily. Making sure that we're tapping into those resources, but we're doing it at speed, means that we'll have better information flow between the two. And ultimately, again, we'll be in a better place for our consumers.
It kind of touches on the point that Alec made earlier on about easing the brief process between agencies and clients as well. Seba, your experience is similar, or kind of, you've worked at extremely large companies. What are the difference in dynamics from what you can imagine there are between smaller companies and larger companies when they want to adopt AI?
I think it's, it goes back to procurement at the end of the day. So again, there are so many LLMs out there. Each of them they have their pros, their cons. So again, if you're in China, you have to consider Ernie, that is Baidu's LLMs. So again, the question is the internal team collaboration. So sometimes at Coke, for instance, it was driven by IT because we wanted to have a cloud. So what is the right cloud solution? Therefore, we will be working with Microsoft. Therefore, you're a little bit pushed to use OpenAI. So if it's a company using more of a Google Cloud, probably Google will try to squeeze in Gemini.
Yep.
So I guess the battle is really to understand what we as a business is trying to achieve. It's not just about marketing; it's about the wide infrastructure of a company.
So you're kind of saying that the small companies and the large companies face similar problems, just the large companies are doing it at scale and they need to get buy-in from other departments within the company as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So that's a little bit, what I was mentioning regarding the deal with Coke and Microsoft. But again, you can question as well. So if you want to go more on the chatbot, that is more close to a human conversation, you have to consider LLM like, I think it's Falcon, which is one of the best in the market at the moment. So again, at the end, you will have a lot of providers, so it's about efficiency and how your CFO wants to operate.
You touched on a good point about like this Chinese LLM, for example, and I think that just opened a question a bit wider in my mind about do you find that using these LLMs for specific, let's take here in Germany, for example, like the similar culture but slightly different culture, is that important? And are those biases baked into, have you seen those biases baked into different AI models about how they might respond to questions based on audiences in different places?
I haven't seen it, but I think this is where the magic is happening as we human bring our our point of view, really questioning what we're getting from AI, for instance. So I think this is where let's say I would go to my colleagues in Germany. Are we happy with what is written here? Are we happy with more some elements of that is coming from AI? So yeah, we always have to have this final check, this human check that will make it, let's say, much more emotional and much more closer to the market and the reality.
Cool. And Alec, I know when we spoke earlier, this was kind of an interesting point for you, that you like that AI has learned from human data and has these biases. So in your experiments, have you ever seen something similar?
100% the biases are there. But some of them are great. Some of them are really useful. So we know that you can, if you tell ChatGPT that you're going to tip it $50, it performs worse than if you tell it you're going to tip it $200 for an answer. If you tell it your job is on the line, it will give you a better and more comprehensive response. You can use all the behavioral economic biases that we know work, from social proof to loss aversion, all those kind of things. They work on the machines. And we know that it's interesting you're talking about sort of ability to persuade. There's been some research recently that shows that large language models are better at changing the minds of people who subscribe to certain conspiracy theories because A, they have the time to listen and empathize more than we naturally do, because obviously we sort of get our guard up when you're met with a countervailing opinion. So they have the time to listen to you and then feed back your own biases in a way that's constructive. So we're seeing both biases baked into the machine and the manipulation of those biases used back at you in really interesting ways. Talking about the difference in cultures is also interesting. ChatGPT is definitely a Western phenomenon. Like you see with the studies that are globalized that the effects are not replicated in, say, the Middle East because there's a cultural sensitivity that it's just not sort of coded for, I guess. So yes, there are biases, and obviously from a data security, an integrity point of view, and an ethics point of view, you want to be hyper aware of that. But sometimes you can leverage those biases for your own end, I think.
So final question before we open it up to the audience for you, Alec. How can Gen AI unlock untapped efficiency? Or what is the biggest lever where you can see Gen AI making a difference?
So I still think that the best thing that any company can do is spend the $20 to $50 and give everyone a ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini subscription. Obviously sandboxed, like I get the enterprise version. These things, we worry about data security, but there are enterprise versions. Some LLMs are HIPAA compliant, they're GDPR compliant. There's a whole load of, there are ethics boards governing them, even if OpenAI did just dissolve theirs. So give everyone give everyone the tool, and then I think, not to be too cynical about it, but like I think the incentive structures are wrong for getting people to use them, right? So if you can use ChatGPT and cut out 60% of your job, the natural inclination of a middle manager would be like, great, I've got 60% to fill. Why not let that person work 4 days a week? Why not reward them for having automated a part of their job that they find boring so they can free up time to do more interesting things? Like, we know that people are bored at work. I think there's a stat that people are bored on average at work for about 10 hours a week. 10 hours. Imagine if you weren't bored for 10 hours and you could either have that as free time or sort of a personal equivalent of Google's 20% R&D thing. So I think right now the power lies in the hands of the individual to innovate, but there has to be a sort of incentive shift to allow people to be a bit more lazy.
Yeah, it's a good way of thinking about it. Guys, do you have any questions for the panel? Or any efficiency problems that you might have that these guys might be able to shine some light on? No? Oh, go.
To whom? To the chatbots or to us?
To the brands. Coming back to the point that you raised around, the brand is there to invest while the agency is there to innovate.
Yeah.
What questions should we be asking that we're not currently asking ourselves?
And are you brand or agency side? Brand side. Okay, I'm going to give a cop-out answer. I'm going to say ask ChatGPT. It would do a better job than I do under pressure up here. I think, okay, so one thing that you can do, provided you've got the security in place, is just like feed ChatGPT or Claude just a bunch of stuff that you've done recently at work, right? Everything from some sort of data matrix through to a presentation that you gave or received, and then genuinely say, like, what do you think we could do what do you think this is missing, right? Or what do you think we could do to approach this better, and how could an agency do it? What I think is really useful about using ChatGPT as a sounding board. I know that sounds so glib and everyone just says that, but they are pre-programmed to be helpful, right? So if you ask it to critique something, it will mostly say, hey, you've done a great job, and it'll give you a few little pointers. Ask it to give you a brutal takedown of all the work that you've done, and it will be like vicious, and it will really help probe like the ugly corners of your work that you don't really want to look at. I think that's probably where the good questions lie, like lying underneath all the sort of shiny happy stuff. The ugly corners of stuff is what I'd go for.
So I think if you're using AI now, then it's probably thinking about what the barrier felt like when you first started using it on a personal basis. So there is a fear with AI, which is like, I knew what Google did. You type in, you get a result. With this, you have to think slightly differently, and it does take a bit of a leap to start using AI in your day-to-day. I think for us, like, this is a room of people that obviously have an interest in it. But when we think of the personalities in our business and the people that we have to convince, I mean, a lot of them couldn't care less, and they're really the people that we have to sell the advantage to. I think the more we use it on a personal basis in our day-to-day, and like if we cut out 60% of our workload, we shouldn't be hiding it. We should actually be telling people about it, and that's when we'll get more adoption. So that would be my view on it.
Cool. I saw you have a question.
So I think it enables that, because there's a lot of crap work that we all do, which is just like the day-to-day, which you have to get done to enable you to think strategically. You need the foundational knowledge before you can layer on top of that with genuinely critical thinking. So this should help us to access that level of thinking on a more day-to-day basis. And like I say, I think the biggest win in this should be the client-agency relationship.
Yeah, I think the point here is really, the way I see it, it's really making good to great. So, there was a really good session by Tom Goodwin earlier, so talking about, criticizing our industry. But it was really interesting because, again, you saw some of his examples. So, there was a kind of manufacturer but advertise on social media without even showing the car. So again, for me, it's really about using AI to see, okay, have we checked all the boxes, just to do the bare minimum of communication. So it's really, how can we be better in what we do?
Yeah, I think you don't have to use AI you can use AI to speed up execution. That makes sense, right? But you don't have to use it to speed up creativity. We talked about hallucinations earlier. I think what's interesting about hallucinations is that if an LLM spits out something you don't like, we call it a hallucination. But if you like it, you call it creativity. So it has the weird corners of it are like the best place to look, basically. So if you spend some time looking at, say, interesting creativity frameworks, Brian Eno's Oblique Strategies is a really good one. You ask basically bizarre questions like, what would we do if this product had to work upside down, kind of thing. And you prime the AI to think with that framework, then you can still go through this sort of slow creative process, but you've now got someone who is vastly more knowledgeable with a particular sort of mental model than you are. So there's no reason for creativity to speed up just because execution does.
Cool. I think we'll finish here. I just want to make one more point on your question, which is I have a fear that people might become too reliant on these tools and use them to generate ideas and that actually shuts off human creativity. There's been plenty of times where I've had ideas which I think are better than what the canned responses from ChatGPT can actually generate. So the question that I think should be focused on is what parts do we actually want to automate? And do we want to automate a lot of the actual high-level strategical ideas that are there? And if the answer to that is no, then I think you should be having humans to actually make those decisions. Cool. If there are more questions, I'm sure the panel will be around, but I am concerned that we're over time, so please give a round of applause to the panel. Thanks.